All right. Hello, everyone. Give me just a second to set up my slides and everything. So, here goes. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to this first online event about effective team collaboration in AI. Let me share my slides. Indeed. Here it goes. So now you should be able to see my slides. So this event is going to be recorded. You can have you will have the video upon demand. Probably it's going to be on our website as well, Hopsworks.ai. And yeah, let me dive in. So before introducing team collaboration, I want to talk about the other components of an ML platform. And obviously you have all the, let's say, the actual frameworks and all, but on a very high level, what we want to talk about is the teams, the data, so that's all the assets, the deployment and the performance of an ML platform. And we consider that our kind of the overlap of that is what Hopsworks is. That's what a feature store is. And today we will be focusing solely on teams. And the reason for that is that essentially we know from research, such as a McKinsey study, that the poor alignment and let's say bad collaboration with teams do impact the outcome of a project, especially in ML, right? And so again, another example here, if you go with Salesforce, they also found that 86% of employees felt that a lack of collaboration and an ineffective communication were responsible for workplace fire. Uh, I will move a little further, and if you know, and I'm sure you do, that trope in data science and ML, machine learning in general, it's like that 90% of the models never get to production. There was this article on Towards Data Science a while back about this very topic, and the first paragraph was this. I mean, that's part of it, and highlighting that the effective team communication or lack thereof is one of the reasons for those models to actually never, and never being in production. And that's essentially also our apprehension. Quite a few years now in the market, and talking to customers and all, team collaboration seems to always come across as one of the main item, if you will, of challenge. So effective team collaboration is long overdue, and we will show you how to get to there. But first, what teams, right? So in the context of machine learning and AI in general, and maybe insights and data in general, right? We talk about data engineers, data scientists, ML engineers, and business analysts. So those are the teams we are focused on today. And business analysts can be fraud analysts, can be marketing analysts, people who are specialized in maybe a product side of things, looking for insight on the product as well. It's maybe an umbrella that's a bit wider in itself. So where are those teams today? How do they collaborate with each other? So give me indulge me in a few minutes just to talk about that. So first, data engineers, whose role and maybe challenge is to say, okay, how do I know what data relates to the business requirements? And essentially, how do I featureize, or how do I make that data available to a data scientist? In our experience, it is also true that the data engineers are sometimes removed for some of those business use case. We think it's a mistake, obviously, and you shouldn't be removed from the business use case. Data scientists have a more straightforward consideration, which is how do I spend more time creating models? Or even so, how do I spend more time creating better models? And if we move down the pipeline, you would see that the machine learning engineer's role is like, okay, I have great models, I have great data. How do I make that productionizable? And that's really the case also for structures that need real-time feature engineering or real-time streaming of features, and maybe real-time predictions. That's for fraud detection and such. And you will have ML engineers that try to create those pipelines in production. Now, if you move to the business analysts, Oftentimes you will see there is a disconnect and they're not really part of that conversation. But we believe that's pretty much a big mistake because they are the one that need to leverage the initial data to create insights, but they also kind of need to provide that insights and domain specific knowledge to say to the data scientist and other part of the team, okay, this is what we are trying to solve. And so disconnecting the business intelligence or operational business from the AI is also kind of a problem that leads to ineffective team collaboration across an organization. Sorry. And so across the organization, if we again look within the scope of a typical AI requirement, what type of data do those teams should or are sharing to each other? And so I guess we can start with the business analysts. So they probably are more on the source side, the operational side of the data. And that means they probably have some legacy setup with all the data warehouses and all. And that's fine. They are generating that data that the data engineers then need to featureize, to create features out of, for the data scientists to be able to create models of, for the machine learning engineers to be able to put them in production. Now, we've looked it back to the business analyst because we kind of believe that in the best possible practice, or in the best setup, you would want your models in production or any insight to feed back to the business analyst so that they can actually take insights from and refeed it back to the business. Some models are just like a lag prediction, like as I said, fraud or maybe credit scoring. So perhaps those do not literally feed back to insights, but then the business analyst will be defining maybe the quality of the scoring, and that will improve also the models over time. And the big absent in that kind of data flow is often the business use case, but in reality, the business use case is really in the middle. It should be in the middle. Oftentimes, you would see the business analyst sharing the use case to the data scientist, but let's say in certain organizations, we've seen also that the data engineers, the ML engineers might be much closer to the business use case as they should be indeed. But if you have multiple teams, that also creates secluded or multiple ecosystems, right? You would have an ecosystem for the business analysts, you would have an ecosystem for the data engineers, one for the data scientists, who is the data engineers, perhaps some ML engineering as well for the production, and all those ecosystems overlapping with each other, different frameworks, different technologies, so on and so forth. And that isolates each kind of teams, and that creates a kind of a gap in collaboration for those teams. But that also creates a gap to productionize the use case, which is at the core of the problematics, right? And this is essentially kind of a way to translate that gap. Because of those secluded, isolated ecosystem, those teams work in their bubble. And I mean, we've seen this in many organizations where data engineers and data scientists might not actually be totally in line with the use case because their consideration is to improve the frameworks or improve the actual ecosystem that they are working on rather than putting models in production. So it's really a stoppage to productionize use cases. That is those isolated ecosystem. So the solution is a collaborative layer, the new collaborative layer that is a feature store. And how do we envision that? Is whereas you have those things being linked but isolated, we see them more as intertwined and kind of overlapping. So you would have a shared ecosystem, and that comes with a centralized platform. Obviously, we see it as being a feature store where the data and the assets and the logics are shared across all teams. And a centralized platform, in our view, translates in a project-centric ecosystem. whereas the projects will be the items that you share across the platform and across the teams, and the assets of the project will be the items that are shared across the team. And I'll dive a little bit into that. And this is essentially where we go from what is to what should be and how to be effective in the team collaboration. So what is a project? It's a collaborative space between all teams and all data. And at the center of each project is the use case. That's the core. And the use case can be anything. It can be a credit scoring, as I mentioned earlier. It can be also kind of isolated by region. It can be fraud detection. It can be customer data, lifetime value and such, churn predictions. It can be anything. But so the idea is to center a project through a business use case, means that everybody that has access to that project has always the consideration of the use case or the business use case or the challenge that they're trying to solve at the core of the project. And so what is the anatomy, if you will, of a project, at least in Hopsworks, and how do we kind of provide that layer of use case centric project to our users is essentially here, right? So you have a shareable and reusable assets, data, features, pipeline. So that would be transformation code and such. You would have kind of capabilities, version control, validation, and so on for feature groups and feature views and training data sets. You have access control, which is obviously the main central item of what allows a project to exist. So who has the ability to read, who has the ability to write, who has access, what project is shared across different projects, and so on. And so obviously all this makes it part of that wider frame in the DevOps world, which is the CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous development logic, where each project are part of the creative branch. I'll dive a little bit into that a bit later. And so in our paradigm, a project is a multitude of feature groups. So that's online, offline, external. External being the metadata of a feature groups that would be stored elsewhere. So you don't actually have to write it into the feature store project. You can just like map it to the data elsewhere in Snowflake or something like that. A feature view, which would be kind of the metadata of a feature group. So that would be multiple feature group creating into a feature view. So that's the join logic and so on. Training data sets that's that you may need to create your model, and we also have a model registry and model deployments, obviously for the machine learning part. So that's the logic on the project side, and that's kind of the center of the ecosystem. But obviously there's more. There's another layer around it, which is the feature store. It allows the feature engineering, the governance. It has the UI on top, very nice, if I may say so myself. An API online and offline to connect to serving and so on. And it has connectors. So that will be your storage connectors, Azure, AWS, GCP, Databricks, Snowflakes, JDBC, and so on. The model, the BI connectors. So, maybe if you want to work in Tableau or Domino, something like that. And so it creates this loop essentially from the data to be fed in, from the operational side, data warehouses and databases, and to create the models that you want to put in production. And I look back kind of from the governance as a kind of item here. That's the roles and the access-based control. And you can kind of go a little bit further down in the logic and say, okay, if I have one project for prod, one project for staging, and multiple projects for development, then you start to see that CI, CD logic appearing in this paradigm. And centering a little bit on that, you can see it this way. You would have multiple sandbox development projects, which would feed into a pre-production or staging project. And then you will have your production release branch, which will be your main project that you want your models in prod here. And that logic helps developing those models into production, helps maintaining the ones that are already in production, and and so on and so forth. To get back slightly to that use case centric approach, I'll just give you an example. And if we look at this through the scope of that fraud use case, you would want one would want the data in a fraud use case to be divided between the personal data that certain teams cannot access, so that maybe should be isolated to the main data that maybe a wider range of teams can access. And this will allow, this logic, this product logic allows those to coexist, to feed, to overlap in production when maybe the historical data is a much wider data set, and maybe the PII data for fraud is a much narrower data set, and you may want the models to be aware of it, but maybe you don't want the teams to actually be able to look at the individual data. So you can create those complex pipelines, you can productionalize them, but you can also work on them and create this business, this collaborative logic, whereas everybody has access to a specific part of the pipeline. And just to get back to it, essentially what it means, it's that it allows everyone to focus on the use case. And the use case meaning putting models in production. So productionalizing models at scale, any scale really, but also kind of creating that environment for collaboration between all teams, all data across any region, anywhere. I think I've been fast, and we do want to keep those kind of short introduction short indeed. We are aware of everybody's time, so you can contact us obviously on Hopsworks.ai. You can also kind of register to our next events. We will have a talk which will go a bit deeper on the CI/CD part, the data part, how assets are shared, how feature groups perhaps can create feature views. Well, what's the necessities of online, offline, the consistency across it all, and all that. And I welcome you to join us for the next session. Now I'll be taking a few questions. I've been already seeing a few. So if you allow me 1 second to actually find them. 1 second. Where's my mouse? Okay. So, okay. What is the role of a business analyst in an MLOps environment? So, I guess, so again, for us, it is part, or she is part of the same team, but really the idea behind having the business analyst on board with the rest of the AI ecosystem is to have a more use case driven approach, right? So you would have business requirement, use case requirements provided to the data teams, but also the feedback loop kind of in between the data teams and the business teams. In the case of the MLOps environment, that's just where the models that are produced kind of feedback to the insights and give better insights to the business analyst, who therefore can improve the use cases and improve perhaps the business requirements. All that being said, just the main goal still remains to put models in production. And yeah. How can I share my work with my colleagues? Well, you share a project, right? So yeah, maybe let me go back here. This is what you share. You share a number of, actually, this is what you share. Okay, this is what you share. You share feature groups, training data sets, feature views, which all comes with their own environment, right? So your own libraries, Python libraries or like, and their own storage connectors. So they are all connected to the sources of the data. So meaning that you can have a project that is connected solely to Snowflake, a project that is connected solely to something else, and not overlap. You can overlap, but they all have that kind of ability to be isolated projects if you need. So, but so to share, it's just role-based access control, right? So I would be able to see in this logic, for example, as a project owner, or maybe a feature store owner, data owner, I would be able to see the prod, the pre-prod, and the dev, and I would have read access to all. But maybe a part of my team would be only working on improving new features or new logics. They would be working only on the development. They would be not see if they would not build that. Sorry, they would not be able to write and create new feature groups into pre-prod, but they will have a read access and they could see what's happening, and that will kind of create some insight for them to improve their work. So it's like read-write kind of logic across project, but you can be owner of multiple projects. You could have, everybody could have access to everything. It's kind of to the organization to be able to see what kind of solution they want to create on top, like what kind of logic helps them drive those use cases. Is there a loop back from production to the development environment? I guess that's kind of self-answering here. All right, how do I check the provenance of my features? We do have a lineage view. So each feature group has provenance, which would tell you where to which training data sets they are fed to, and also where they're created from. So you would be able to actually see from the feature group perspective where the data comes from. So we have provenance, we have lineage. I see a few other questions, some of which I must say are a bit too complex or too technical for my ability to answer right away. But we will answer to you by email or like. We will also share this video online soon, so you will be able to share and see it. I can only continue to invite you to our next event if you're interested in this kind of short, kind of fast and straight to the point format. We like to keep it to a certain simple idea that can be shared also across teams. It's part of the team effectiveness as well. We don't want to only talk to ML engineers, or data engineers or data scientists or business analysts, but I think we want to create a ecosystem that people can use to communicate also their business needs. So feel free to join us for the next event. Feel free to contact us for more information. And I wish you a good night. That would be for me, and good rest of the day for our friends in the US. And see you later. And thank you. And this is the awkward moment when people stop sharing and stuff. All right. Ciao, ciao.